Okay, today, boys and girls, we're going to look at rational exponents, exponents that are fractions. So when we have an exponent in the form of a to the p over n, we have to remember that p is our power, the numerator is our power, n is our index, the denominator is our index. And we can write it as a radical as n goes in the little house and then the square root of a to the p. Okay, so the restrictions for the index is it has to be a non-zero integer. So let's just try some examples. Oh, by the way, I have to also mention that when we write the square root of x, this is understood to be x to the 1/2. Of course, the 1 is understood here, and the 2 is also understood in the radical. So we normally don't write the 2. We just write that as x to the 1/2. Okay? All right, so let's look at this first problem. It's x to the 3/2, so our power is 3, our index is 2. So we could write that as x to the power of 3 with an index of 2. So remember, we normally don't write that index of 2, so we could just write this as x cubed. Also recall from when we did exponents earlier that anything with a negative exponent goes in the denominator. So we're going to write this as 1 over a raised to the first power, with an index of 5. So I can write that as 1 over the 5th root of a. Again, it's negative, so we're going to put it in the denominator, so it'll be 1 over 5 raised to the 4th power and the third with the 3rd root. Remember, the numerator is power, the denominator is index. All right, pause the video and do the next 3 problems and come back in a minute. All right, guys, welcome back. I'm just going to go over the answers with you again. So for x, we're going to write x to the 3rd, and we're going to take the 4th root of that. This would be 4 to the, I'm sorry, I'm thinking ahead of you. So this would be 4 to the 1st power and the square root of that. And of course, we don't have to write it that way because all of that's understood. So we can just write the square root of 4, which in any case is 2. And finally, for the last one, we have 1 over, because it's negative, q to the 1st power with an index of 4, or simply 1 over the 4th root of q. Okay, so you need to recall these properties from earlier in the year. When we multiply and they have the same base, we add exponents. When we divide and they have the same base, we subtract exponents. When we raise a power to a power, we multiply exponents. And what I said before, if you have a negative exponent, it's going to go to the denominator and become positive. All right, so let's do a couple examples. So I want to rewrite this with rational exponents. So this would be x, the power is 3, and the index is 2. Remember, if there's nothing here, that's an understood 2. Okay, because this one is in the denominator, this is going to be a negative 1 over m to the power is 5. The index is 3. So we could write this as m to the negative 5/3. Now for the second one, we have to be careful because both the 2 and the y squared are being raised to the 3rd power, but the 2 is not being raised to the 2nd power. So we write this as the cube root of 2 times the cube root of y squared. So now we can write this as 2 to the 1/3 times y to the 2/3. They have different bases, so we can't add those exponents. What I gave you is actually needed for down here, sorry. Needed for down here. All right, pause the video and you can do the last 3. Okay, welcome back. So this is going to be x, the power is 2, the denominator is 3. This would be 1 over x, the power is 1, the index is 4. Well, we can also write it as x to the negative 1/4. And this last one, my power is 3 and my index is 4. Okay? So the information I gave you there is actually needed here, so I'll just leave that up there. And we're going to do a few of these and just simplifying. Okay? We're going to start with 27 to the 1/3. And that is just writing the cube root of 27. So what can I multiply by itself 3 times to get 27? 3. This would be written as 1 over the square root of 81. Because remember, this would be an index of 2 and a power 1. So the question is, what is the square root of 81? 9. So that would be 1/9. Now, looking at this looks difficult. Because we would want to say 64 squared and then raised to the 3rd power. How many of you know what 64 squared is off the top of your head? Probably many people don't. But we could also write this as the cube root of 64 and then squared. And that might be a little easier. If you recall back when we did sum and difference of cubes, the cube root of 64 is 4. So this is 4 squared, which we can all do. Apparently we all can't do it. 16. Okay? Now, when we are multiplying, so this rule applies. When we multiply, we have to add exponents. So this is going to be 2 times y to the 1/2 times y to the 1st power. So we would add those exponents. So this would be 2. 1/2 plus 1 is 3/2. Okay? The same thing with this one. We're going to start by multiplying the coefficients to get 12. And then it's x to the 2/5 times x to the 1/4. And I'd have to add those two together, which gives me, let me see if I can do that in my head, 8 plus 5 over 20, which is 30, 12 over 20, 13 over 20. You can check my math on that. I'm not sure, but I added those two exponents. I tried anyway. So, I wrote that all wrong. Sorry. Okay. So the 12 remains, and then it's x. Adding the exponents, I think I get 13 over 20. And in this last one, we have a power being raised to a power. So remember, when we raise something to a power, we multiply the exponents. So this would be a 2/3 times -6 is -4 times b. -1/2 times -6 is +3. And remember, the 4 is going to go on the denominator, so this would equal to b cubed over a to the 4th. All right, here are 3 problems. Pause the video for a minute, and if you guys can complete those 3 problems, it's great. All right, welcome back. So this first one, we're just adding exponents. So this would be y to the 1/3 plus 4/5. And I have no idea what that is, but let's see. I get 5 plus 12 over 15. So 17/15. So this is y to the 17/15. And yes, I could write that. If I wanted to be fancy, I could write the 15th here and then y to the 17th. I could do that. Once again, I think it's easier. You could do these either way. You could do 8 squared and then take the cube root of that. Or you could do the cube root of 8 and then square that. So it doesn't really matter. I would probably do the cube root of 8, which is 2, and then square that to get 4. Here, if you squared this first, you get the cube root of 64, which we talked about earlier was 4. So you could do it either way, and you still get 4. And on this last one, we're going to raise the power to a power. So we get, remember this is 9 raised to the 1/2. X, 4 times a half is 2. And then y to the -2 times the 1/2 is just -1. So the 9 to the 1/2 is the same as saying the square root of 9, which is 3, x squared, and then the y goes in the denominator. And that is it. So thank you for